Check 1, 2. I'll have it down just a minute. Check, hey, hey. Check 1, 2. Hey, 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 hey.
so great. Did you see this?
As soon as I can.
Okay, perfect.
How'd you get one?
Yeah, a kinder community.
Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock, and I hereby call the Monday, August 28th, 2023 Cumberland Town Council meeting to order. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. It's great to have people in the room.
Is your mic working?
Oh, I'm hearing folks. We can't. Sean, can you check just to make sure there's?
We're on now.
Okay. Can folks hear me in the audience? Do I need to just move
No,
this
not
forward?
yet.
I can't hear yours.
You can't hear me either.
People at home can hear you.
I can hear me now.
There
You folks hear me now? Okay, wonderful. So I hereby call the Monday, August 28th, 2023 Cumberland Town Council meeting to order. Might want to shut the sound off on that. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We did have an executive session meeting tonight as a council pursuant to Maine Revised Statute Annotated Section 4056A1. That's it, Ron, just in case you were trying to find it earlier. Regarding a personnel matter, that concluded at about 6:45 before we kicked off this meeting. The first item of business on the agenda is the approval of the minutes, and that is from the August 14th, 2023
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
council meeting. Okay, we've got a motion.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion on those motions? Seeing none. All those in favor? It's unanimous. Next on the agenda, we have manager's report. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In light of the full crowd tonight, I'll hold my comments to the end.
Okay, great. So now that we've moved manager's report to the end of the agenda, we will go directly into public discussion, which I believe is why most of you are here. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. I will invite members of the public to come up and speak, but I will say that one of the agenda items, well, any of the agenda items that we have tonight, if your comments relate to those, I would just respectfully ask that you maybe hold those until that agenda topic comes up. But if you do have a topic that's not on the agenda tonight, feel free to raise your hand and address the council. Please. And I think we all know you, but if you don't mind just saying your name and where you live for the record. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very light up back.
Sean, could you up the mics, because no one in the audience can hear. Sean is right behind those walls. He can't see us, but can you turn them, because no one can hear.
Do I hit the start button, or do you guys?
I think Bill's got that.
Good evening, Terry Maloney Kelly. On June 19th, I came before the town council, with the exception of Councilor Douglas, who had yet to be sworn in, to ask questions about the proposed 72 housing project by David Chase at the Chase Pit on Blackstrap Road. This was one of 2 projects being promoted by the council. Tonight, the second one is on the agenda. At that time, I did not remember that the West Cumberland gravel pit zone had been rezoned back in 2016 in to a West Cumberland housing overlay zone, which has essentially made all of West Cumberland west of the main turnpike housing, including the existing gravel pits and their ability, like Mr. Chase is proposing, to put in residential housing. As I learned, by being on the planning board, just because something is zoned to fit does not guarantee the project. We have turned down businesses and projects in the past as it was not fit or the right time for our town. Regardless, I asked relevant questions about this proposal, its impact on our town and school system, the impact and concern about the ongoing process of giving up commercial properties for residential, placing further burden on our individual taxpayers. I am still awaiting response to my inquiries. After the June 19th meeting, after the June 19th meeting, Town Councilor Shirley Story King had a conversation with our town manager in which he advised her that he had the 4-3 votes to get the Chase project passed. Mind you, this conversation occurred before the newly elected councilors were sworn in. As of today, no inclusive discussion at the town council level has been had for this project. Giving a verbal agreement to support a project by any counselor who has not had an inclusive peer conversation, public input, or conversations with your neighbors is extremely concerning to me. This is not how our town leaders have approached their responsibilities in the past that has made Cumberland what it is today. At the July meeting, Councilor Story King followed up and asked when they would discuss my questions and received no response from her fellow councilors. Looked like stonewalling to me. This lack of transparency, inclusiveness, and openness is more alarming to me as a citizen than worrying about how to pay for these projects. The past few months, I've watched and experienced many concerning things when it comes to the leadership team for our town. Your approach has been nothing but proposing additional financial burden on your taxpayers. Your top 3 priorities for the town council this year was, and I quote, pushing the school through, end quote, creating more housing by promoting a 72 housing development that will have significant impact on our schools and infrastructure, and the potential 110 unit public rental housing project on Drown Road that will not only burden our school system, but create a new tax and expense directly on the taxpayers. Pretty scary and impactful stuff, even if you have the financial depth to take this additional tax burden on. Stonewalling occurred for the second time, from my point of view, at the town council level at the last meeting. Councilor Story King made her second request to her town council peers to have a collective discussion about the proposed 110-unit public rental housing project. No response was given, and no town council leadership meeting has occurred to discuss this project. However, tonight, quote-unquote, leadership is considering an RFP. How a new council can make these serious financial tax implication decisions without comprehensive input and discussion at a leadership level is hard and sad to see happening in my town. I have to ask, as a council, who are you representing? Is it the town manager, your own personal agendas, or the collective desires of the citizens who elected you, pay the bills of the town, and you represent? The Cumberland we know today was not built from lack of inclusiveness, was not built from lack of transparency, and certainly not built from lack of open, tough conversations. Quite the opposite, as I've been part of this process and solutions. I'm hopeful that this new council will come together and work together as a team and not let the past 60 days define who you're going to be. So to that end, when might I expect to get a response to the relevant questions that I brought up during public comment at the June 19th meeting? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So when can I expect an answer to that question?
I will happily respond to your questions. If you send me an email with those, I would be happy to respond.
Well, you have my previous questions. You have it in the minutes that have been approved by the council at this point. That was June 19th. So I guess my real question tonight is, I don't want to have to send it by email, when might I expect? What might be a reasonable expectation on my behalf?
I will review those minutes again, and I will schedule a time to meet with you in the next week
No,
or two.
my request is for the council to come together as a discussion group, leadership group,
Understood. We will get
not
to
your
that.
responses.
Okay, well, we will get to that. This is not an issue on the agenda this evening, the questions that you're discussing, and so we will get to that as a council, and we will get back to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else to address the council on an item that is not on the agenda this evening? Please.
Bruce Sherwin, Blanchard Road. I'm following up on this lady's thing here. On the, what I'm calling the sardine box out in West Cumberland that's going in with 72 units on a small thing with very little space between the units. I'd like to know, what is the process for getting that passed. How does the town council relate to the town planning board? So that I and the town knows how it works, so we can be there if we want to be there. How does it work? What is your role in it?
Please, Mr. Bill.
Mr. Sherwin, there has been a brief application by the applicant of a proposed subdivision up there.
I'm aware.
There is not an actual application before the planning board as of yet. When that application becomes, when there is a real application filed, there will be the planning board will hold public hearings, review the application, and it will go through the process that the planning board has in order. As you know, zoning is a policy issue set by the comprehensive plan and the council, and after the zoning is enacted, it's then up to the developer or a homeowner, whoever wants to build on a piece of property, to follow the ordinances, the rules, as you will, and if they meet the criteria that's given, then they're granted their application. So it is a policy is set by the council, comprehensive plan is set by the community, and then the planning board is instructed to carry those things through with a judicial review, if you will. So when a application shows up before the planning board, then the opportunity for the public to be engaged with that's the appropriate time.
Has there been any planning board meetings yet?
As I said, there was a brief introduction by the
Okay.
applicant for a sketch plan, I think is what
And
you
that was
call
at
it.
a planning board meeting?
That was a
Yep.
planning board
Yep.
meeting, yes.
And I
Um,
believe Counselor Story
Yeah,
King
there was
also
a
had some
sketch
added.
plan review in which Mr. Chase wanted to hear responses. Some of the people from West Cumberland were there and shared some of their concerns. And then I believe it's on the planning board agenda for September. No?
It hasn't been submitted. Tomorrow's the deadline, so.
Okay, it was going to be September, but we'll make sure you know.
What is this 4-3 vote that was mentioned earlier?
No idea.
What is that about? Or,
I think the TIF water line.
the town manager
I guess.
has 4 votes, 3 against? That was brought up.
Not
Is
sure
that
what
true?
you're talking about.
I'm not sure. So the only vote that was really taken was in the TIF committee that
I
dealt.
think what she referenced was a conversation the manager and I had about the Chase Pit development, and I was concerned, as you are, about how compact it is, and the fact that single-family homes are being called condos in order to make the project work. And our conversation was a bit heated. It sometimes does get heated between he and I, and he believes that the council will support it when it goes forward.
But it's not a
But
council
it was
decision.
not a public
It's not a full.
conversation. The,
So to us folks out here, we need to pay attention to the planning board's
That's correct.
agendas on the
Correct.
town council. That's how we.
well, and
Yep.
also to the town council too, because there are some certain things the town will have to spend, we'll have to spend money to run water across there for that project to even happen. So it may pass planning board approval up to a certain point and then not make it if we don't run water across the turnpike.
The town is paying for that water, not the developer.
That is what's being discussed,
through,
yes.
through TIF.
Is there
through
any
funds.
TIF, is this Chase getting any TIF deals or not?
The water main will be extended.
The water
from
main? Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to address the council on a topic that's not on the agenda? Please, if you don't mind just saying your name and where you live.
Yeah, Bob Couillard, Lower Methodist Road. I can't believe that this project's even contemplated. If
Which project is
Of
that?
you,
Wh-
this building project in the sand pit. Now, you people that have been on the town council, planning board, Bill, several years ago, we had a lot of problem with pollution coming down Lower Methodist Road. That whole area coming down. Now, you build all these homes there, there's gonna be a lot of septic systems. where's all that gonna go? Where's the aquifer? How, have you looked at how the aquifer flows out of that area? It comes basically from the lake right down Lower Methodist Road and Upper Methodist Road. So you put, what, 70 units in there? What I'm concerned about is polluting the water again in that area. For a while, my well was tested by the state every 6 months. And I don't want to go through that again. So I can't believe this is even contemplated. Because when I was on the planning board, we had that conversation. And it was a big deal back then. I'm surprised it's not a big deal today. So, no, I'm against it.
Thank you. Please.
Hi, Joyce Bond from West Cumberland. And I just have a question relating to the TIF and the water main. Is that a decision by the council, or is that a decision by the administration as to when to spend TIF money?
Town council.
Yeah.
The decision to run the water over is a town council decision. And just to clarify, we haven't heard a thing about the Chase's Pit from a council. And I'm as horrified as Terry is and everybody, but we have not been involved. And I just want to clarify my position. If the town officials are allowing this to go through as a condo project, we're doing nothing but cheating. This is pure cheating. From the very beginning, this has been a house. They've called it a housing proposal, not a condo. And the town is complicit in letting this project slide by. Calling it a condo project, which is pure BS. And I am taken back by the fact that we're participating in changing what the rules of condos really are to what condos are. And the only reason they're trying to shove this project down our throats. So,
Okay, so if I understand that residents' objections can be raised at the planning board as well as at the discussion for TIF?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
That's actually how Mr. Vale and I knew about it, because we were at that planning board when they were doing the initial discussion of it. We're there for something else.
Anyone else like to address the council on something not on the agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none, I think we will close public discussion and we will move to legislation and policy. The first item on the agenda is 23-091 to hold a public hearing to consider and act on authorizing the town manager to prepare a request for proposals for an affordable housing project to be constructed on the town-owned property on Drown Road. I don't know if folks in that side of the room can see the screen. I don't know if that's up and running yet, but there is okay, good. Sounds like you can see that. We wanted to, just to first start before we have public comment on this, just to let folks know that I think over the last couple weeks, we heard a lot of comments 2 weeks ago from many of the folks who are here this evening about concerns about kind of the timing of this, maybe how quickly it might feel to folks, as well as not really knowing when the dates are, when certain key elements or key things are going to happen. And so it was asked a lot of us, when do we need to show up? Do we need to show up for this meeting, or do we need to show up for this meeting? And I think those are really fair questions. I can say that we on the council have been discussing this for quite some time, and we're a little bit inside baseball on it. So I think we forget that maybe other members of the public maybe haven't been as dialed in as some folks have been. And so we kind of view this a little bit as a journey, and I wanted to place that roadmap. I think we can get copies of these. Maybe this will be sent out to folks as well. But today we're on that first bubble. You can see August 28th. And there's a lot of history that has kind of gotten us to today. One thing being the GPCOG study, or a GPCOG memo that came out in 2019, really talking about the cost of growth, where that cost comes from in a town, how towns have been growing, how Cumberland has been growing. You know, has it been because of new houses being built, or has it been because of turnover of existing housing? So that kind of set a little bit of a framework there. We also had a housing task force that many of the members are here tonight, and I'm happy to see, that looked at this issue of affordable housing in our town for about a 6-month period. They issued a report in January highlighting specific recommendations to the town as to what types of units could potentially be built, how we strengthen our housing authority to be able to better manage and foster affordable housing in the town. We've also met many times, I don't have the list in front of me, but with developers and housing agencies, everyone from Avesta Housing to Westbrook Development Corporation to the Bateman Partners, to the list goes on. So we've had many meetings with them, kind of understanding from a development perspective how you even build affordable housing. I mean, it sounds easy in concept, but when you start dealing with how you build something and make it affordable and how you keep it affordable, it can be complex pretty quickly because it relies on complex federal and state tax credits that dry up and move and are shifted with different administrations. There's legal instruments that are used to try to make something affordable and keep it affordable. So we've had many meetings with them. We have also conducted an independent, we engaged an independent consultant to do a supply and demand study where she looked at kind of the capture rates in our community, what would our community support, what are the demographics of our town in terms of income, in terms of renters versus owners. And that's kind of all led us to this point of issuing this RFP, because I think all of us on the council understand that, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth here, but I would say I understand that there's a need for affordable housing in this town. And we don't want to just build any type of project. We want to make sure it's the right type of project from both, does it fit our community, would it actually serve members in our community as well as potentially welcome others? And also, is it even financially feasible for a developer to pencil out to build this thing? Because we can draw whatever plan we like and whatever we think looks nice in the community or fits the needs of our community, but a developer might come back to us and say, this actually doesn't work. Financially, the tax credits for that AMI, area median income group, has dried up and we can't build that anymore. We need to build it for people at 80% of AMI or 40% of AMI. So before we can really put costs to anything, we need to move this conceptual discussion forward and ask a professionals, I should say, in this space to kind of come back with their best ideas and their best proposals of what could be built. So that's the first bubble where we are today, which is, again, just talking about issuing the RFP, not accepting it, not moving forward. But that would then move us to the second bubble, which is November 2nd. So about 2 months from now, we would ask those developers to come back to us with their plans. We would review those criteria, and we consider up to maybe 2 proposals. About a month and a half later, in mid-December, is the third bubble there. The goal would be to identify a potential partner, partner up with them, and figure out what their plan is, and does that meet our needs. At that point, obviously, it's the winter holidays. We would then, at the beginning of January, start community meetings, where we plan to have 3 community meetings over the next few months, one on January 8th, another one on January 29th, and another one on February 19th. And those meetings are designed so folks can really see the plans, they can talk about what the tax impacts of those specific plans would be for the town, the types of units, the numbers of units, the design and what they look like, really roll something out, draw on the paper, and get involved. Because I think we all are hearing people, we want community support. We're just at the point where it's kind of conceptual at this stage instead of it real. And the final decision would be to potentially vote on something in March. So as you can see from this journey here, there's quite a bit of time in between tonight, which is issuing this RFP, getting those responses back, and before we would make any decision. So with that said, unless any other counselors had a comment on the timeline, I might open this up for public discussion. Mr. Bell, please.
I would just offer a little back of forward, I guess, maybe that's the right word or wrong word. This did not happen in a vacuum. This is a process that was started approximately 2 years ago with the idea that we would create a housing task force and identify what the needs of the community was, followed by looking at the comprehensive plan. So the housing task force was instituted. It was a unanimous decision by the council at the time. Members of the community were selected. Mark and I served as liaison on that committee. And I see a few members here this evening. Anyways, the result was some recommendations for the council to move forward with, and so it's been basically about 2 years before we've gotten to this point, and it's Some of you may be very familiar with it, and some of you may find this all to be new news, but this is where we are this evening.
Please.
Yeah, just one thing I wanted to add in there as well, as it has been part of the comprehensive plan, and we've been in kind of this information gathering phase for quite a while. I do just want to point out that these kind of listening sessions and getting all of this feedback is really important, and that was why we added some questions to the community survey that you guys may remember from 2 years ago, and we have kind of those results as well, because we really wanted to understand what the pulse is, both for kind of multifamily housing as well as senior housing. And so kind of the community voice and the desires of the community also did and continue to be a big factor for us in kind of the decision-making matrix as we begin to work further down the journey that you've so beautifully put together.
Well, I had helped putting that together, but
Or Mr. Shane put together.
any comments from the side of the council? No? Okay, so I think with that, we'll go ahead and open it up for public discussion. If anybody would like, just please step up and say your name and where you're from, but please, welcome. And we're going to try to limit, there's a lot of people in the audience, we are going to try our best to limit these to 5 minutes per person, but thank you so much.
Mine will be very short.
Okay.
My name is Carol Riley, and I live on Carroll Lane. First, I'd like to commend the board for your openness and your hard work in your attempt to bring us affordable housing. I bought a modest ranch house here in town 7 years ago before prices started skyrocketing. If I was looking for something now, I would not be living in this town. And it's not just we seniors. My grown child, a single parent who works in the area, is renting an apartment which raises rent yearly. There's no affordable place in this town to rent or buy for workers, teachers, firemen, policemen, etc., who wish to live in the town where they work. I realize change can be scary, but I believe bringing affordable housing to Cumberland will benefit us all. Do not let fear of the unknown keep us from exploring our options, for this is what the agenda item is. Exploring our possibilities by authorizing our town manager to prepare and send out an RFP to companies who develop affordable housing projects. Let's be brave and open-minded. Let's see what's feasible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Get to you next, sir.
Jesse Lamar Vincent. I live on Range Road. Yeah, I just wanted to support the council in moving forward with this RFP. I think you guys have done your due diligence. I mean, you spent 2 years putting together a task force to look at this. And, you know, I think if there's no good proposals or if it doesn't fit, I trust that you guys will make the right decision and not move forward. But having grown up in a school district where I had friends who had trust funds and are multimillionaires, and also having friends who had single parents who were struggling to survive, I think I'm a better person for having lived in a community that could accept people from all socioeconomic backgrounds. I know my education was better for it in a public school, and I want my kids, who are 3 and 7, to grow up in a community that has people with all those opportunities and all those perspectives. And I don't want to see our community head towards, you know, a gated community where only the wealthiest of people can get in, and we close off opportunity for other people. So I commend the work you guys are doing, and I fully support you, and I hope that you guys will move forward with this. Thanks.
Thank you. There's a gentleman in the back here, please, yes. And then Pete, I'll get to you next. Sorry.
Good evening. I'm Greg Sweetser. I live on Blanchard Road, and our family has been in this town since before the town was even created. I recommend that my full support for you to continue to study. It seems like you've put a lot of time and effort into it. There's been the Housing Committee that has spent a lot of time on it. Looks like you have a roadmap that's going to allow tons of input from everybody in this community, so I don't see that there's any problem there. I read through the brief on the proposal. I mean, some of the parts of it I like. It talked about 30% of these apartments would be for 55-year-old and older. So you're looking at creating a diverse community in many ways. By making it affordable is very important. My dad was one of 3 kids. I was one of 3 kids. I have 2 boys. We all would not live in the house on Blanchard Road, believe me. And out of all of those people, I'm in town. My brother lives in Cumberland. My mother, bless her 92-year-old heart, is in Cumberland. And now my son and his baby live in Cumberland. But everybody else in the family moved out of town and out of state. So I think having more diverse housing is going to be a great thing. My son Eben, they look at the cost of housing, and as we heard earlier, there's got to be lots of options for people. I think it'll be very beneficial to the town. So kudos to you, and keep up the work, and I'm sure you'll have lots of comments over the months ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. I gave Pete the next. He's been very patient. Pete, go on up. You'll be next in line. Thank you. I feel like the DMV. Like I need one of those little take a ticket. Actually, I shouldn't have said that. Nobody likes going to the DMV.
I'm Pete Wilson from 18 Oak Ridge. I lose my voice when I come up here. I question the premise that there's a need for affordable housing in the town. If we were talking about creating housing that needy people in Cumberland would move into, I think that would be a big advantage to the town. But if we're talking about creating housing so people can move in, that's not a benefit to the community. I certainly I agree that if it were my kids, then yeah, I'd like to have my kids come in here. But this is a road to Levittown or Newark. It's nuts. The Blue Rock gravel pit, that idea is nuts. 110 more people, residences, that's nuts. Huge strains on the school. Gee, darn it. Not just on school population, but also on property taxes covering the cost of educating the kids. It ain't there. And we're talking about killing our what I want to say, ambiance in the town. I just think it's no good at all, and we do not have a need for it. It's not a benefit to the community. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Good evening. My name's Sally Bancroft, and I live on 12 October Farm Lane. And I'm here to support the forward thinking of the council and for taking on this apparently controversial issue, which I didn't realize it would be quite so controversial. But I think until we have a way of assessing what are the possibilities, we really can't answer the questions of the taxes, the school. We really need to see what is possible. And I think this RFP would do that. And I think that's the way to go. And I applaud you for taking that on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please. Betsy, we'll get you next. Please, Alan. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Alan Newton. I live on Old Musket Road. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is affordable housing. This is not low-income housing. But the affordable housing is for our teachers, our firefighters, our police, our EMTs, all of whom will be paying appropriate taxes. I can't think of a better project than this. And if there was a way to focus upon those people that work in the town, give them priority for housing, I would be fully in favor of that. I don't know if there's a legal way of doing that. I don't even pretend to understand the complexities of these issues, but I'm sure there are ways that we can prioritize those units for the people that are teaching our kids, protecting our homes, saving our lives, and I'm just really proud that the council is considering this, and I hope it moves forward in a timely manner. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I want to echo that, being proud of a town that takes up this kind of issue. I'm Betsy Harding, and I moved about 4 years ago into Cumberland Crossing off Tuttle Road, coming back to an area where I grew up, but I'm really glad to be back here. And I heard an earlier speaker talk about the fact that the town is inclusive, and that is so important to me. So I think that the council is really good at grappling with issues that are very significant to us. And I want us to know, I want us to think about what happens if we don't go forward and examine housing opportunities. You know, right now, I already know some people whose children and grandchildren cannot move back. They grew up here, but they can't move back. They can't afford it. They can't afford to rent or buy. What about a senior right now whose house is too big, too difficult to maintain, can't get a roofer, et cetera, too difficult to shovel? Where are they going to go? We need some housing that is affordable to people whose incomes are not great. We don't want to have an exclusive community with just the housing prices that right now are skyrocketing, $750, $800, and much more. It's just amazing. What happens if we exclude opportunities for teachers, for nurses, for people who are providing regular care for us, for the people who are going to replace our roofs or whatever? We need places for people of all incomes. We need places for people who are coming as immigrants into this country, helping us to do things that we're not able to do anymore. I think that having people of all ages helps us to create a really caring and healthful community, and I'm so pleased that this town is grappling with it. I think it's really important for us to find solutions, and examining it at a time like this is really a best way to start on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please.
Hi, Joyce Bond from West Cumberland. And I would like to request that you do nothing with the RFP at this time. Not because I have any problem with you looking into affordable housing of any kind. It's just that we are facing two major increases in our taxes, one from the school system and one from our reevaluation. And we do not know what the impact is going to be on our tax bills. And you have moved a RFP, or trying to move an RFP forward that will be decided before we get the final version of our tax revaluation. You're going to be making a decision on March 30th, and the tax evaluation doesn't come out until April 1st. I'm sure that was deliberate. It's a way to get your money in before we have to take money for the school and for everything else. But I would like to request that you wait until we figure out what our tax impact is on our two highest priorities before you start actually having developers spend their time and money trying to find something that will fit on that property, even though your designs are, $1,800 to $3,000 a unit, which I don't consider that affordable. It is still less than what buying a house would be. So, but, thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Bruce Sherwin, Blanchard Road, and I think I'm going to need more than 5 minutes. Not much more, but maybe a little more. I've got a few things to say. First of all, when you look at these things, I'm going to differ with some people here and say that I don't think the town council has done everything they could or what they should do on affordable housing. And I'm going to be a little more specific as I go here. The first thing you need to think about with this affordable housing is time and place. I'm a business guy, so I'm thinking like a business guy. And the town is a business. Time and place. Next thing you need to look at is costs and due diligence. That's where the town council has not done their job. And the last thing to look at is TIF and how it affects things. The town council has not explained that well to the town. I'm going to try to fill in a hole that they have not explained to people today. First thing, time. Councilor Segrist asked me last meeting 2 weeks ago if I was in favor of growth. I was not too fast on my feet, so I had some time to think about it, so now I'm going to answer it a little differently. I've been in town 42 years. Councilor Segrist, I've seen a lot of growth since I've been in this town. I've never seen the kind of growth that you're asking for here. It's been more measured. I don't want to say controlled, but because you can't really control it, but it's not been exponential. And I am in favor of growth that's measured and you can handle. And tied in with that is, quite frankly, everybody, we already have a growth problem. We don't need a more growth problem. We got one. We got a school problem. We got a tax problem. The taxes in this town have gotten to be outrageous. We got people that are worrying about losing their house with the increase in taxes. And the town council has moved aging in place to the back burner behind a new name of, active lifestyle 55 plus, which is nice. They're just two different missions. They're two different missions. Aging in place is not a party issue. So our growth is it's a problem already. Place. Cumberland, the gentleman here stated some things that I agree with. Cumberland is not a Westbrook. It's not a South Portland. It's not a Biddeford. It's not a Portland. It's not a Brunswick. We don't have the services of those places. Those things are going to cost us money. So we've built our town with the idea of it's kind of an exclusive place to live in. I believe that when I moved into Maine 42 years ago, Cape Elizabeth was viewed as the most expensive place in southern Maine and Maine. I think Cumberland is viewed that way now. And that's because of actions that have been taken by the town government. For instance, putting in beaches, putting in performing arts centers. Those things cost money, folks. And it also gives us an ambiance and what our town is about. We don't have the services that these buildings are probably going to need. For example, and the services that these buildings are going to need, especially any elderly housing like the one that's already approved down on Route 1. It's White. I can't remember the name of it, but it's elderly. The services they need, really, folks. I've worked with a lot of low-income housing in my business career. The services they're going to need are emergency medical, fire. For some reason, the fire goes with the emergency medical almost all the time. Police, other social services. I don't know what they are. We'd have to ask Bill Shane. Bill Shane at the last meeting stated that we don't have the social services in this town to take care of the family, that the husband and wife that are having health problems up on Main Street. So I don't know what those social services are. We could all guess what they are, but we don't have them. They're going to be new, and we're going to have to pay for them. I just don't think the town council has done what I call due diligence on these things. Now, we had a a town task force that was put together, and that task force, I appreciate what they did, but really, they weren't asked to do the tough stuff. They weren't asked to look, how is this going to fit into the town?
Mr. Sherman, your 5 minutes is up. I'd be happy to extend you an additional 2 minutes as a rebuttal now if you'd like that. Public comments are limited to 5 minutes.
Okay,
but
well,
again, rebuttals can be 2 minutes. I'd be happy to extend that to you now. You did ask for additional time, so I'd be happy to give that.
Okay, so
Sorry to interrupt the flow.
anyway, well, you've lost my train of thought, so thank you, Mr. Segrist.
No good.
Thank you for,
I'm just trying to make it fair. There's a lot of people here, and I know there's a lot of comments, and so I just want it to be
okay,
fair for everyone. But please, take the extra time.
no, I'm all done.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Would anyone else, please? Yes.
Janice Spalding, West Cumberland, and apparently I am going to make this a habit. Just popped up on Facebook. There are a few things that make me sadder than a group of privileged landowners opposed to allowing less privileged community members to enjoy the benefits of community. It's heartbreaking. And if that were true, if that was what's happening, that is absolutely true. I work every day with marginalized communities in Maine. If we were talking about housing for asylum seekers, subsidized housing, homeless vets, pick a group, I would be right there with you. It's worth making the sacrifices. We are very privileged in our lives. I am not one of the over median income in the town of Cumberland, but I consider myself fortunate to be here. This is not affordable housing. I think there is a misperception or misconception that poor families from Lewiston are moving to Cumberland are going to be able to go to the schools. According to the RFP draft tonight, 80% of the MFI is the minimum requirement. According to HUD, the median income is $118,000. According to Mr. Shane, it's probably closer to $126,000. Probably somewhere around there. Assuming the median income is $118,000, the required income to move into this apartment complex, we'll call it for now, is $94,400. If Mr. Shane's number is accurate, $100,900. Way more than I make, tell you right now. These apartments, 1 bedroom, $1,800, 2 bedroom, $2,400, 3 bedroom, $3,000, according to your consultant. She provided in her report a comparison of market rate apartments in the area, including Yarmouth, which I think we would all agree is a more comparable town to us than some of the others she chose. Those rents were approximately $18,500 to $3,500. So it was knocking a couple $100 off. As somebody who a couple $100 would be a big deal, my oil going up a couple $100 a month, big deal. That's not nothing. It's not bring us your destitute, inviting poor underprivileged Mainers to move into Cumberland. It's just not that. My biggest objection to this process is the process. I was here for the consultant's report. There were a little bit of opportunities for public questions to her, a couple of counselor questions to her. At no point has the counselor sat down together and discussed her report. The good, the bad. She looked at it from a regional state issue, which it is. Housing is a regional state issue. She didn't look at it from a Cumberland perspective. She didn't know about the extensive waiting list at the senior townhomes. She looked at it from a global issue, if you will. It's your job to look at it from a local issue, which you have not done yet. When you do that, hopefully you all come to a consensus. I know a couple of members think it should be all senior housing. A couple think it should be mixed housing. The rest of you are kind of in the middle and could go either way, I think. But you haven't come to that decision yet. You haven't even had those conversations yet. And yet you're putting out an RFP for mixed housing, which totally negates Mr. Eads, who said, why don't we build 30 more townhomes like the ones that have a 125-person senior waiting list? Mr. Shane says to me, oh, that'll be on, that, all of it will be under discussion. Yep, we'll discuss that. And here we are voting on an RFP, which that's not it. A developer is going to give you the project that is best for them. That makes them money, that's their job, no judgment there. But they're going to give you, just like the consultant said, you can get maximum rents if you don't limit to seniors. That's their perspective. It shouldn't be yours. It should be your job to look from Cumberland out when the consultants you've talked to are looking from without in. I am completely, I think you especially, not to pick on you and you, I think you have a global perspective. You've said it flat out that we all have a role, government has a role to solve larger issues. I completely agree with that. But it can't be at the detriment of the lower income residents in Cumberland who are already struggling. You know that 16% of the 19% of residents who are renters are struggling. You have no idea what percentage of homeowners are also struggling. And I think you need to answer those questions before you go down the road of a project.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Anyone else, please? Yes.
I'm Chris Byrne. I'm from West Cumberland. First of all, I want to say I'm very much in favor of the whole process here, of looking for solutions to the affordability problem that we have. I'm frankly a lot more alarmed about the idea of squeezing in 72 more units in West Cumberland and poisoning an aquifer, but as pertains to the housing, the community that doesn't continue to grow and diversify slowly dies, and you know, we don't really want to be in that boat. My concerns with regards to this are, A, when putting out the RFP, have we already determined a number of units, or are we going to let a developer determine from their perspective what is marketable, feasible, profitable, and come back to us with a number?
The latter. So
Okay.
in other words, the initial concept draft that everyone continues to reference, the 110 units, was just trying to figure out from a zoning perspective, from a height requirement perspective, from the land perspective, what's the maximum number of units that could be built. I don't think there's a lot of appetite on the council for maxing that out. However, we wanted to try to figure out what that number would be. But the developer may come back and say, look, you can't do 110, you can only do this many, and this many actually have to be senior, and this could be reserved for working professionals, and so.
Yeah,
we
my
just
own
don't-
gut feeling is that'll never happen. They're going to come back and say, we're not going to do it unless we get more, not less, because it's not going to be affordable. But that, obviously,
Yeah, we'll see.
issue the RFP, see what they bring us. I'm all in favor of that. The one thing I would just stress is that you had a task force out here that did a lot of work. I just want to make sure there's adequate feedback at that time, because once we get that report back or those options back from them, it's super important that what gets built is actually going to fit in the community here. What we get actually matches what we want, and that we don't just go down one side or the other. So there just needs to be enough public feedback here to determine what that mix of housing is going to look like, and that we're not, frankly, you know, dumping something in the center of town, or that we're using appropriate spots in town. If you're doing something in West Cumberland, work that into the mix. If you're doing something in the center of town, it's maybe not the same as what you can, you know, do in West Cumberland. So that's all I want to say. I think you guys are doing great work with going through this process. And now I'd love to see the process, you know, come to fruition in a way that satisfies a lot of people's needs here. So thanks.
Thank you. What else have a comment? Please.
Yes, hi. I am Reverend Allison Smith. I serve the Congregational Church in Cumberland, just down the street. And I also want to applaud the council for their diligence and foresight in a process that has been over 2 years, longer, to address what is so vitally needed, which is more options for housing for more people of different backgrounds and economic backgrounds. And I imagine that a lot of people in this room live in a single-family home. But that is not a one-size solution. Not for many people at different chapters in their lives. Not for every person, single or couple or family. So for most people starting out, me included, or people who are dealing with a transition in their life, or some people who are aging, living in a multifamily dwelling makes sense. So think for yourself, have you lived in an apartment, perhaps? Maybe why? You were just starting out. Maybe you do right now. And you are saving, you want to have a single-family home, or maybe you're trying to work on that down payment. Maybe you've got loans, whatever it is. Or maybe you have never lived in an apartment. Maybe that's because you were able to move into a single-family home right out of the bat. Anybody have that experience? And if you did, perhaps it was because somebody in your family had the home that you could move into and that was passed on to you as the next generation. Or maybe somebody in your family had land and that enabled you to not move into an apartment, but then get to move into a place, a piece of land. Or maybe you inherited some money. But many people live in apartments, multifamily dwellings at one stage of their lives. And sometimes it happens if you lose a spouse or you get divorced. Maybe you can't take care of the lawn anymore. Maybe you want to be in a place where there are other people around who care. And you don't want to be isolated, because that's a major problem we have in our communities right now. So having these other types of housing in our community is so important, and it's so needed. It depends on the stage you are in your life, whether you're starting out, where you are. And I just want to share in closing that there is a verse that is important in 3 different faith traditions that I really love, and I really want you to hear because it's helped me. You are blessed to be a blessing. You are blessed. You have been blessed to be a blessing. You know, we have all been so very blessed. And this is a key way that we can concretely be a blessing on someone else's path. This is about more than just me. This is about us being a community of welcome and caring and love.
Thank you very much. Please.
George Turner, 4 Carriage Road. I'd like to just offer my perspective of a little bit of the history of this town from a growth standpoint. I'm finding it fascinating, the inclusiveness that the kumbaya that we're here acknowledging. You guys, I think, contrary to some opinion, I think you've done a great job so far. I think your RFP will probably ferret out problems. I'm afraid that you may not even be able to come to a conclusion. But I was on the council for 16 years. I was on the planning, I'm on the planning board now. I was on the Board of Appeals for 22 years. Chris and I have been in our house since 1977. In the late 80s, there was a 5-year plan. We used to have 5-year plans contemplated every 5 years. And the tendency was to look at the way growth was working at the time, look at the graph, and extend it out another 5 years, which was much too simplistic. But what was interesting at that time was that the 4-acre minimums and the 2-acre minimums were created by a hydrologic study, which came back suggesting that the soils dictated one or the other. It was probably, on some members' parts, a little cynical in the sense that it was really a move toward encouraging less growth. We were worried about the growth. If we were worried about the growth then, at that time, Cumberland was a lazy little farming community that we could all enjoy. Ron Kopp used to hunt in all kinds of places where housing developments are now. We can't go back in time. But those of us that have lived here and love this town, and the town itself is a blessing, realize that times change and so on, and we have to change with them. But I just want to leave you with another thought, and that is that the West Cumberland project, juxtaposed against this, is part of why you're getting perhaps more thoughtful thought processes by people testifying here, because the concern about taxes is valid, the concern about the schools and the population of the schools is valid, and when you're looking at 72 units up in West Cumberland and another 110 of probably rental housing, which may or may not encourage us to do the right thing by our neighbors and enjoy the fact that we've finally come to a conclusion that allows for diversity in the town and so on. We've grappled with the fact that people who work for the town, people in the town office, police, fire, and so on, it's been unaffordable for a while for a lot of people, and it's unaffordable for a lot of us if we had to buy our property back. So bear all of that in mind, and I don't envy your process too much, but and I'm glad I'm not one of you anymore. Thank you.
That's reassuring.
Thank you, George. And yeah, thanks for all your service to the town. Please.
Hi, my name is Angela Stone, and I live in Cumberland. I wrote things down, so hopefully I'm within the 5-minute, and I'm incredibly nervous. I wanted to share my own lens behind why I'm in support of the exploration and possible creation of affordable housing in Cumberland. I think maintaining a true middle class and a socioeconomic range in a town matters. For over a decade, I worked as an interior designer in the suburbs north of Chicago. The towns I worked in had median home prices of $1 million or more, and this was 5 years ago pre-pandemic. Their median home price rose significantly in those 5 years and is now 1.7 to 2 million. These suburbs are incredibly beautiful and idyllic in many ways, but they feel odd and fake, like a set design of a town, and it feels like that because it's an intentional financial bubble. It's not because of what their town council passed, but because countless people will continue to sell their homes to the highest bidder. And because I don't believe these affluent communities cared enough to make sure the middle class could live there. Everyone seemed to drive the same 4 cars and have the same 4 jobs. The home prices continued to increase because, like Cumberland, it's close to the city and close to the water. Smaller houses were bought and torn down and mansions replaced them. I remember finding out that the public school teachers made $100,000 a year and still couldn't live in the town. Of course, many of our teachers, police officers, fire department live in our town, but most of them bought before the free market housing prices soared. Just for comparison to the towns above, our current median home price is $750,000. $1 million median price doesn't seem that far off these days, and I don't think that's okay. Would you be able to buy your house now? Would your child or grandchild's teacher be able to afford to purchase a home or afford to rent now or 5 years from now? Would your grown-up son or daughter with kids of their own be able to move back? My son's kindergarten teacher lives in North Yarmouth and has a son in the same grade as him. Seeing her at soccer practice and basketball practice on the weekends was a big highlight for him, for us too. I think these connections are important to keeping the small town feel that we all love. The well-argued point that it's a tough time to invest in affordable housing is completely valid, but we still need to. The housing market and rental market in Maine is just not affordable for most families or seniors. I currently have a friend looking for a rental in these areas in Cumberland, Yarmouth, Falmouth, Freeport, Brunswick, and to get a 2 or 3 bedroom house right now or an apartment, people are renting out their own homes, and it's around $4,000 to $5,000. So it's beyond not affordable to rent in these areas. Since the pandemic, at Maine Needs, I've seen an increase in the number of families becoming homeless for the first time in their lives. Parents with little kids are asking for sleeping bags because they're living outside in tents or in their car, and this is true in all 16 counties. While I realize the housing being discussed will not help those that are unhoused directly, it is contributing to a solution that I believe deep in my heart that we all need to be part of. Our homes are increasing in value every week. Our homes are increasing in value every week that we continue to debate the justification of others being able to afford to rent in our town. Everyone's cost of living has increased, groceries, heat, childcare, etc., but not everyone has a home, much less a home that is increasing in value each month. That's it.
Thank you very much. Please, yes.
Hello, my name is Christina Mitchell, and I live in Shady Run. I will also note that I'm on the school board because that topic seems to come up a lot, so I will put that right out there. When people speak to me about the school budget or about the potential new school, they express concern, as they do to you, about the budget, the cost, their fear of being priced out. And I hear that. I totally get that. At the same time, we hear from teachers and ed techs who we would like to retain, we'd like to hire and retain. It's very difficult to do that when they can't afford to live here. So, to me, in order to help residents, seniors, and people who may have grown up here, in order to help all these different groups continue to live here, it's not just about offering senior housing, which is great, and it's not just about senior tax assistance, which, thank you, that's great. It's not just about helping one group who's lived here and loves it. It's not just about helping them continue to live here. It's about affordable housing so that their adult kids and their adult kids' friends can live here. And so the teachers and the volunteer firefighters can live here. I personally really want the volunteer firefighters to be able to get here quickly, so I want them to live here. So whether the adult kids or their friends, their peers, whether they work in the trades or whether they have college degrees, they cannot afford to live here right now. And that's sad and it's frightening. I don't think that's what we want to be. We need to be able to have a place that we all can live and run around Twin Brooks together, or walk. Sorry, got a phone call in the middle of that one. So my thinking, speaking for me, only for me, I think that we want to have houses that are adult kids, that the seniors want to stay here. They want to be able to afford to stay here, and they want to be here because they want to see their kids and their grandkids grow up. So to me, it's logical that we find a way to get housing so all of the different groups can live here. So speaking for myself, I think we need more affordable housing in Cumberland. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, yes.
Hi, excuse me. I'm Sarah Allenby. I live on Main Street in Cumberland. I'm here to thank the town council for all of your work so far on affordable housing and for moving forward with the RFP. As we all know, or I thought that we all knew, there is critical need throughout this entire area for more housing, and I would be excited and really proud to see our town take a proactive approach to help lower income individuals, fixed income seniors, new Mainers, other potential residents be able to enjoy the benefits of living in this town that we're all able to enjoy. I really appreciate the amount of work that went into the recent housing task force. I think it's important to remember that there was time, research, and expertise that has gotten us to this point and will continue to guide the process. When we bought our house 11 years ago, which no, we would really struggle to afford today, we had no desire to live in an exclusive community. We still have no desire to live in an exclusive community. And to be honest, I don't know anybody, any of the other families that we know who have that desire. We're eager to do what we can to make Cumberland a more welcoming and an inclusive community. And so I thank you for leading us through this exploratory process and representing how welcoming we want our town to be for all. Thanks.
Thank you. Please, yes.
Okay, Terry Maloney Kelly. So I don't think there's anyone in this room who would not agree that they would welcome and want to have all of those folks that we know or don't know or read about in the newspaper be able to live here in Cumberland. I'm one of them. However, I am now in that place where I have to choose between myself or somebody else. This RFP, it was going to happen from the day it started being publicly talked about. That's great. My concern is the confusion being developed about affordable housing and what we're really talking about. We're not talking single-family houses. We're talking rental houses. I am one of those citizens who's been around for a long time, built the town to be what it is. I get why you all, especially those of you in the past 10 years, have come here. I get it. And I understand why you want your families and friends to be here. However, that will come at a cost of the existing citizens that live here. I'm one of them. I am that marginalized person. I look into the faces and the eyes of our current clients at the food pantry every 2 weeks. Do you think this project is going to benefit them? Absolutely not. Those rental levels are unaffordable. So what are you doing to them? And it makes my stomach, by the time I'm done seeing all these folks, honestly, when I go home on Friday night, I don't feel good about knowing what is potentially happening in my town at the expense that the folks that I see and look and converse with every 2 weeks, to know that they are part of a population, including myself. You got to sacrifice something for others, and this is how I feel we're going. Go down the road, let us know what you think can happen, but if we really think we're going to help our asylum seeker friends come into our community, I don't think that's a realistic picture. And also, to have to be forced myself into a corner, I'm the first to give of my time and my talent to others. But I have no more treasure to give. I know I have a commitment and a duty to our school and our children. I get that. But how much do you think that you can keep putting on, especially those of us who are Maine middle classers or less? It is a different level of income than any place else. So I just want people to realize that what we think, and I'm the first to say, oh goody, affordable housing, is not necessarily what I think we're gonna end up with a proposal. And then you will then be tasked to decide, you know, who do you wanna take care of? Me, your longtime taxpayers? Or those that you want to have come to our community? Because I really think that is the decision you're gonna end up having to make. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Please.
Mike Williams, Fairwind Lane. So this has been an incredibly heartfelt, thoughtful conversation. I really appreciate really listening to everyone. I had a similar experience growing up in a working class neighborhood just outside New York City. Don't hold it too much against me. We'll talk about baseball later, then you'll really hold it against me. But I won't mention that now. And it was a working class town growing up. My dad worked for a phone company. My mom worked at the school. Police officers, firefighters. But over time, just outside New York City, it became bedroom community, and wealthier people moved in. No affordable housing. Property taxes shot up because people could afford it, and everybody left that town. Anybody working class, they went to Connecticut, they went to other towns. So I worry that the thinking that if we don't do affordable housing, that'll prevent property taxes from going up. I think it's potentially the opposite. That if we don't do this, we allow our property values to just go whoosh, skyrocket up, and it's just a town for the wealthy, it'll just be wealthy people who can take, 10%, 12% more in property tax valuations, and that's not what we need. And so I know that there are multiple major issues in this town right now, and the affordable housing is one of them. So is the space crisis in the school. It's something I actually know quite a bit about. This one I don't know as much about. I was on the school board. And I know property taxes are a problem. And these three things are related. They definitely are related, but we're not going to solve any one of them by ignoring the others. We're not going to solve the space crisis in the schools by ignoring affordable housing. Potentially the opposite. Again, we live in a free market. People are going to sell their houses. We're going to get more kids in the community. It's going to happen. And it's just going to be different problems, potentially worse. And so I really appreciate the thought that's been put into this process. It's iterative. It's got a good timeline for people to absorb what's happening, to give feedback on the proposals as they come in. So I appreciate that, and I fully support it. I look forward to coming back and complaining at you potentially, maybe not. But yeah, just keep up the good work. Keep thinking about this as the multiple problems, but don't give up on any of them. We can solve all of them. There's a lot of smart people here.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else have any public, please? Yes.
I'm Lou Gallaudet. I live on Range Road and have for quite a long time. I agree with so much of what people have said and don't feel the need to repeat it. I absolutely support your getting an RFP to see how we go forward. And I trust that you will look at all the options and that the people who care about particular options have an opportunity to speak their mind. The one thing that hasn't been spoken about that I would just throw in there, and I agree with Sally that we need to do this first and then we can look at the various issues like schools and all of that. I think that's correct, obviously. But the one thing that hasn't been spoken about tonight that I ask you to look at carefully is to not throw out or sign away any piece of land that before you know that it cannot be used for the schools. Obviously, I'm thinking about the Drown Road piece, but there may be others. So in the past, we have done that, and I know there are people on the board who feel that, wow, why did we get rid of the Drown Road School, that kind of thing. So that's the only thing that hasn't been spoken about that I ask you to be careful about, that we don't sign away those pieces of land. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Anyone else with a comment? Please, sir. Get you next, sir, in the back.
My name is Jamie Broder. I live at 14 Old Musket Road, and I was the chair of the Affordable Housing Task Force. We had 10 members of that task force, and they represented new Cumberland residents, people who had 10 generations in the graveyard, and everything in between. We had Democrats, we had Republicans, we had independents, and we found a way to come up with a unanimous report. And I think that the process that we used, and which was open to the public, everybody could have come, they were all publicly noted, was one of balancing these values and making sure that we went out with something that had significant benefit for a lot of people and minimized the kind of pain that might otherwise result. Affordability, we had this question on affordability, and we talked about it. And the reality is affordability is defined mostly by the financing you're getting. If you are getting some low-income housing tax credits, you have one kind of tax. If you have HUD Section 8, you have another kind. If it's public housing, it's a different kind. And so what we proposed was a broad range of things in a broadly different parts of the town. So in West Cumberland, in the center, on the Forth side, that would all be a little different and all meet what were the appropriate kinds of things. We recommended some rather specific things, including doing some projects, getting on top of this and getting some stuff done, and I'm delighted that those are beginning. But I think that the numbers of units, which may be maximum available zoning, were not where we came out on the task force. So we were concerned about the rapidity of the change, and I think a lot of what you're hearing is the very large numbers that are being banged around. My hope is that we can not only meet the needs of working people who can't afford to live in Cumberland now, but we need to go to different subsidy mechanisms that allow rents that aren't $2,500 or $1,800. And just so everybody knows, those who may not have read the report, one of our recommendations, which would require approval by the council, were limitations on incomes in new subdivisions over 10 units that would require that there be mechanisms, a number of which we discussed, to keep those units, to start with those units being affordable, and it was a 20% set aside for that. So over the years, that can add a great deal to home ownership as well as rental. So this is about as complex an issue as there is, because there are so many ways to finance it. There's so many different people who need help. And the report, I think, gives some clues on how to get that done. And I'm very appreciative that the council is moving forward on a number of those, but there's a lot more of it to get to. So thank you very much for everything you've done.
Thank you as well. Please, sir, in the back.
My name's Kevin Balvin. I live in Cumberland, Longwood Road. I just want to say thank you for my 5 minutes. You can send me to an illegal war, but only give me 5 minutes to address the grievances with my town council. I really appreciate it. Thank you. I had a lot of things to thought about and think about as this meeting went by. Kind of actually changed my opinion. I was against, and now I am in full support of this project. I actually want to go a step further because there was a lot of confusion throughout this RFP and what we're trying to look at and things. People talk about low income. We talked about firefighters and cops. We talked about teachers. We talked about asylum seekers and immigrants and things like that. Let's go a step further. Let's put 10% asylum seekers rent-free in this new proposal. Let's actually create a difference in some people's lives instead of charging $3,000 for a family apartment in Cumberland. Let's actually make a difference. And then if these people, great people over there, I was amongst them, if we stop turning their country and their home into garbage with all our missiles and all things like that, maybe they can live where they want to be in their own home country. But let's actually make a difference in Cumberland. Our mascot's a ranger. Let's lead the way in this fight. Let's put in 10%, 5%, actually make a substantive difference in our community that we actually want to do. There's a lot of support for it. So let's do something outside the box, some outside the box thinking, right? This is a little bit different. We're talking about the Route 100 corridor and trying to slow people down. Yeah, let's put some stop signs in there. Let's put a roundabout. How about we develop that area? How about we put some taxpayers, some business in the bottom, some taxpayers at the top, and then we won't have to have a roundabout because naturally the traffic has slowed down. Where are all these outside the box ideas that we have elected you for instead of we're going to let the developers tell us what we want? No, this is our town. Let's tell them this is what we want. We don't care what your bottom line is, your $3,000 apartment or whatever the figures are. It's absolutely insane. Let's make some substantive difference in our town. And you guys can do it. You can request that 10% and make an actual change. So maybe when the basketball games start up in the fall, we don't kick them out of their home or their temporary housing. Let's make a difference in Cumberland. I'm in full support of this. Let's send it over in West Cumberland. Let's get some affordable housing out back. I don't care about the baseball fields because I don't know what the deal is with that, or they get the land for free. But let's make something. Let's do something in Cumberland. It'd be kind of exciting. Full support.
Thank you very much.
It's not facetious. Full support. 10%. Let's do it. Let's make a difference.
I appreciate that. We have a comment here from Councilor Vail.
Thank you for your comments. That's very thought-provoking. Thank you.
Does anyone else have a comment for the public? Anyone else? Okay. Not seeing any. It's been about an hour and a half of public comment on this topic. So if everyone's okay, I think we may close public comment for this issue unless I see any other hands and move to council deliberation. I will first start by opening up to any councilors who have comments, responses to public comment, and thoughts on the agenda item this evening.
I'll start, if you want to start down at the end.
Sure, please.
Thank you, Kevin. Belvin, I don't know if you remember, 7th grade. Hello, Kevin. You did a great job.
We're going to give him rebuttal
thank
time.
you.
This is recorded. Really, we gotta bring up my past. There's a lot. You don't get too
I know, you know, those speeches that we did clearly benefited.
This is people's real lives that we're screwing around with.
I know.
People are gonna get kicked out of their houses because taxes are gonna go up. There has to be some figure out in the middle, right? There has to be, right? It's definitely not electric ambulances, that's for sure, right? So, like, we gotta figure this out. We gotta figure this out for everybody involved, for the people that are on the commercial street in a friggin' tent, they're gonna get kicked out of their spot in 2 weeks. I don't understand how we can spend $150 billion to Ukraine, but we can't take care of our people in our own state. It's absolutely ridiculous. Here's another difference you can actually make. I haven't heard any town council across this nation, I've looked, for a resolution to bring this war, this craziness overseas to a conclusion. Raise your hands right now. We fully support an armistice, a truce to the nonsense that's going across the seas. Absolutely ridiculous.
Thank you, Kevin.
So I would like to start because
Please.
I've been one of the people who's been complaining about us not talking about some of the points in the report. And I would like to echo concerns about people being able to live here. So while we were sitting here and talking about teachers who not being able to live here, I have a 40 47-year relationship with MSAD 51, 13 years as a student and 34 as a teacher. And I counted 12 teachers that I either had or worked with who lived in Cumberland, North Yarmouth, or on Chebeague Island, as in the case of Donna Colbeth and Jean Chadbourne. So I think that might be, I think you will find more teachers in the younger grades, but frankly, if you teach middle school and high school, you might not want to run into your students on a day-to-day basis. Some of the things that jumped out to me on this report, and I'm just going to dive right in. Page 9 of our report says that the income restricted rents are very close to the AMI rents already. Drown Road School struggles to maintain 100% occupancy. Page 10 indicates that the square footage of affordable housing versus market rate is considerable. So if you were to pay for a one-bedroom affordable compared to a one-bedroom market, you would see a square foot discrepancy that I think feels disingenuous to support. On page 12.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on that? I'm not sure I understand what you're saying.
So let's say you were going to build one of these mixed-use apartment dwellings like we're talking about for the ball fields. The rental units at full price would be larger than the rental units at affordable prices.
By 10%, 20%?
I can't remember what it said. I'd have to look back.
And the differential in cost?
But it said considerable.
Considerable.
Okay. Page 12, the LDS people said there are not enough households in Cumberland to fill the affordable units. And creating a similar project to Village Green would meet the same fate. Page 13, regarding demand based on current households in Cumberland at this point and time, there does not appear to be enough low-income households in Cumberland to fill either a family rental or age-restricted rental housing unit. This is where I want to jump in, folks, for the people who haven't been here as long as I have. We have built, in my tenure, Ron's tenure, Mike's tenure, we have built hundreds of affordable houses in Cumberland. We built some on Route 100. We built some on Route 1. We put in CZAs, contract zone agreements, so some of the apartments on Route 1 would be affordable. I mean, on Main Street. We put in 96 units, rental units on Route 1. We have 55 units currently going, under construction on Route 1 in Cumberland now. 55 units for 55 people. So for the people who said that we haven't been doing anything for affordable housing, we have been leading the way. We have been developing Cumberland at a rate of, in the last 12 years, 20%. We've had a household increase of 20%, more than any of the other communities in the study that we commissioned. So it is being done. I don't know why you think we've been, closing our gates at the town line, because we definitely have not. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. Page 19 of our report says 25% of the students are in kindergarten through second grade in Cumberland. That is evidence to me that we do have young families moving into Cumberland. Approximately 30% of the households in Cumberland have kids in school. Page 22, and also on page 19, she talked about a great decline in diversity, and I would not call Cumberland at all a diverse community, other than an economically diverse community. I mean, there's not been a lot of diversity. I would welcome any kind of other diversity in addition to economic diversity. Page 22, it comes right out and says what I just said before. Cumberland has far surpassed the statewide growth. The statewide growth, folks, we're 20%. Statewide growth is 3.5%.
Statewide growth, you said?
What?
You said statewide growth is 3.5%?
Correct.
What about Cumberland County and York County?
Higher.
It's similar.
They're 3.5%?
Closer to 3.5 than to 20. Page 23, nearly all growth age-wise in our community was 15 to 34-year-olds and 55 and older from 2010 to 2022. 2022 to 2027 numbers show a decline of 10% in our school-age population, an 18% increase in our 65 and older, and a decline of 10% in our 45 to 64-year-old population. That, to me, indicates all those people who are able to pay their taxes. Their kids are mostly through school, and they are at the highest wage-earning potential of their careers, and they're leaving. So our decrease projected by 2027 is 170 children ages 5 to 19. Yet, our increase for the 25 to 44-year-old is 13%. So young families are coming here and staying as long as their children are here. I did a little bit more digging because, you know, I took this statistics class to get into graduate school, and I really didn't have the opportunity to use it much with my master's in education. So here I am playing with my statistics. So I looked up on the government census that you can look up income by zip codes. And in Cumberland, the 04021 zip code median income, when I looked it up, was $120,938. The 04110 zip code was $139,837. So that's a difference of almost $20,000. And I know people who are living paycheck to paycheck, that $20,000 is a lot of money. Page 26, that's the page I had the most heartburn over. 13% of households in Cumberland, 13% folks, earn less than $50,000 a year. That's 385 households in Cumberland right now earning less than $50,000 a year. Households under 100,000, 38%. More than 1 in 3 households in Cumberland has a household income of under $100,000. That's 1,122 households. According to GPCOG, 3% of Cumberland households live in poverty. That's 88 households, and that pretty much matches up with what we see at the food pantry. So I did go into these numbers in this report, and I think Kevin would probably tell you I'm not a closed-minded individual. I don't know, I think I taught him English, not social studies, but I'm not for closing our borders. I'm not for shutting people out. Many current households, and I put this in red on the handout I gave you, are paying 8 to 10% of their household incomes a year in property taxes. 3.5% is the average in Cumberland County and the state, interestingly. 3.5%. My niece Jackie, who's quietly sitting in the back of the room, pays 12% of her income in property taxes for her home. She's a single woman, very ambitious, quite accomplished, doing it on her own. So I guess I want people to know that's where I stand. And when you see me oppose the RFP, we have not had enough conversations about this. I know that the alarms went up and the flags went up and said, we are not supporting people. We are not being loving and caring. I would like to say I am hoping to be the blessing for those people who are having a hard time right now, those people whose household incomes are under 100,000, who are paying 8-9% of their property taxes, household incomes and property taxes. Someone else mentioned if you don't grow, you'll slowly die. We've been growing. For the last 18 years, we've been growing like hellfire. And so I guess that's where I stand. I worry that, as in the past, we go down a rabbit hole and we don't know how to get out of it. And that's why I'm not in favor of the RFP. I haven't even gotten a direct answer on whether we own the ball fields. We do not. The Little League, Cumberland North Yarmouth Little League, owns the ball fields. So are we going to do a deed exchange? Those are the nitty-gritty details that, old timers like me remember, back when it was called Suburban Little League, Cumberland North Yarmouth Suburban Little League. It's now just Cumberland North Yarmouth Little League. So that's where I'm going to stand.
Sure, Mark, thanks.
Yeah.
I echo everything that Shirley just said, and I want to talk about the process. Just before I do, there's been a popular thing when supporting this item that you talk about housing for the fire department, housing for our teachers. Well, I checked. We have 9 full-time members and 20 volunteers. All 20 volunteers live in Cumberland. Out of our 9 full-time employees, 3 live in Cumberland, 2 live in Wyndham, 1 lives in Gray, 1 lives in Buxton, and 1 lives in Poland. The ones in Wyndham actually live in Forest Lake. Out of the 9, only one of the spouse works in Cumberland. So our firemen are housed, our teachers are housed. So, but it makes for a great line when you're trying to shove this project down everybody's throat. This project, I looked at the numbers on the RFP that Bill drew up, and we talked about 30% this and 30% that. Folks, I don't know where the numbers came from. You know why? Because I was never consulted. Shirley brought up 2 weeks ago, she said, can we sit down as a council and talk about what we want as a council? You guys elected us. Guess what we heard? Crickets. Not one email came across asking us to sit down as a council and give the manager direction. We don't work for the manager, he works for us. He drew up the RFP, not us. How do you possibly send something out when you don't know what you want because they haven't asked? I hope the leadership on the council and the council as a whole is not going to be happy with the 4-3 vote. That's what the school board does. The school board is happy dividing the community and getting projects, and if they get a 50.1% vote, they're happy as hell. I would ask the members of the council to not vote, send it back to the council, we draw up what we want, and then we send it out for vote. Just don't, this is literally throwing everything up against the wall and seeing what sticks. And I would ask my fellow councilors to please allow everyone on this council to have input on what the RFP is. That's what I have.
Thank you, Councilor. I guess, Ms. Filson. Unless anybody else has a comment. We don't need to go down the line if nobody has anything. Well, we don't need to.
I'll be last.
You'll be last, okay.
Ronnie says he'd be last, okay.
Mr. Vale?
Sure, I'll jump right in here. So Shirley, you've pointed out all these facts and figures about people that live in our community.
The report's online for anyone who wants to look it up, by the way.
Right,
It's
right.
called the
I'm not sure the
Affordable Housing Supply and Demand
RFP
Analysis.
will change any of that.
Bob, can you repeat that? I didn't hear you.
I said, I'm not sure that the RFP will change any of the statistics that you brought to our attention here tonight. This is not a, you know, yes, we have families that live in poverty in this community. We have people that pay, as you said, 10% of their income towards their taxes. But that's not going to change. The RFP is not going to change that.
Are you talking about the RFP or the project?
Either way, the project is not going to change the statistics that you brought out here.
If you have a turnover in population from people who can't afford their taxes, that's going to change things, Bob.
You have a demographic that's going to leave on a regular basis. We've known that for 40 years. People come to this community to educate their children, and then they move on.
Yes, but a third of them have stayed, or more than a third of them. A lot of them have stayed. Not everybody moves. I think the numbers.
I think that
it was
I think
288.
you're right.
There were
That's-
288 who moved away.
That you're not, I think you're missing my point here, is that there is going to be turnover on a regular basis, regardless of what we do. This is not a destination for retirees. This is a destination for people who want to educate their children.
Not entirely.
No, it is. It's a lot of people move to this community to educate their children. If you talk to any realtor, you can say, you know, that they promote the idea that Cumberland schools are top in the state. And that's not a bad thing. It's just a fact.
They're also the most expensive. They also have the highest mill rate of any district in the entire state.
I would be quick to agree with you. I would be quick to agree with you. I spent 15 years on the school board trying to mitigate that, and
So putting more children in school, let's say, I've done some thinking, so let's go with just because the math's easier for me, the 76 units, that's 38 households. 2 kids per household, that's 76 kids, okay? That is 5 per grade level, okay? That's gonna cost some money. It costs $22,000 a year to educate a child in SAD 51 schools. Our taxpayers pay 72% of that bill.
So can I jump in on that? I think that's a fair point, but one of the goals of this roadmap, which is up on the screen now, is to be able to address those specific numbers of what the net is, right? Because there is a cost to adding new kids to a school district. Of course, we know that. Right now, we don't know what that number is. We can throw a 35 out there, we can throw whatever, but until the developer comes back and says, hey, 50% of this is actually seniors, the other percentage is maybe working professionals or single bedrooms, and then the others is for families, we won't know the number. And so we won't be able to calculate what the effect on the school is. I think it's a valid question, right? I mean, all of those questions coming about how many kids are gonna go to the school, what's that gonna do to my mill rate, all very valid. I wish we could address those right now. We just can't because we don't know what that project's going to look like. And when people say you should tell them what you want to build, I think we know generally what we want to build. I personally would like a mix. I don't want just senior, which I think seniors should be at least a minimum of 30, which is what we quoted in the RFP. But in terms of revenue, or excuse me, in terms of income requirements, when we talk about affordability, the RFP says that to qualify, you have to make 80% of that median income or less. So 80% of that income, as was correctly noted tonight, is about $94,000. So if you're at 60% of that, then you're at $70,000 a year. If you're at 40%, you're at $47,000 a year. And if you're at 30% of that median income, you're at $35,000 a year. And so it could be a mix of people that are at 30% of area median income, some that are at 60% of area median income, some that are seniors that are at a different income level. We don't know. And until we see that plan and we figure out what's economically and financially feasible for a developer to actually build, we can talk all day about what the effect on the school is. But guess what? It's just going to be a ballpark figure and no one's going to actually know. The last point that I have with this is that this project, because it's in a TIF zone, we will be able to utilize TIF funds for certain economic development purposes to make this project more affordable. That does not come out of the general fund, that comes out of the TIF fund. And keep in mind that those ball fields right now, if from an assessed value perspective, aren't assessed at a really high value. It's grass and dirt, it's a baseball field. And so once something is built on those fields in a TIF zone, that increase in value, that captured value, will be taxed. There will be credit enhancement agreements potentially. There will be other things that are associated with that from a TIF perspective. But what I care most about is the net. At the end of the day, are we bringing in more in tax revenue than we're potentially spending on additional students in schools? Again, we won't know that number until we figure that out. So does anyone else have a comment, please?
Mark, you talked about, we could talk all day, but we haven't talked at all.
I've been part of years of meetings now talking about affordable housing, and I don't recall you participating in many of them.
I'm saying us as a group.
So many of the counselors have been involved in these. And so we can talk as much as you want. But again, it's conceptual at this point.
What was your worry about having a meeting, especially after Shirley brought it up the last meeting? What was your objection of us getting together as a group, the 7 of us, and hashing this out? Zero communication on this. You said this, I think you just said, we came up with these numbers. Who's we? Wasn't us. Why have you left us out of this process?
So I would take the position that we haven't left anyone out of a process. This is an open council. Anyone is able to go to any committee meeting, participate in any subgroup study that they want to. It is a very open council. I go to ordinance committee meetings, and I'm not on the ordinance committee. People sit in on the TIF finance committees when they're not on the TIF committees. Everyone has been welcome to participate in this process to the extent that they want to. I just have not seen that until tonight.
I spent more time on the building committee for the new fire department, putting the RFP out, than we have with this major project, and that's embarrassing.
Well, I would just add that based on this roadmap, again, we are providing for 3 separate public comment hearings where we will have open dialogue to discuss whatever topic folks would like to discuss related to this project once we actually have something developed. I will also say, Shirley, you quote numbers that I think are accurate, right? They're coming from this study. I've read the study too, and the executive summary to me is pretty straightforward. But I struggle to try to understand why, if you say, or if the study says 13% of households in Cumberland earn less than $50,000 a year, or 1,122 households earn less than $100,000 a year, how that doesn't lead itself to the argument that we need more affordable housing options for people in those income ranges. I mean, that to me, it proves the point. Well, we will figure out the cost of this, right? I mean, that's the thing, is we don't know what the project is. We don't know what the project is.
That feels like.
How can I tell you if I wanted to, well, it's maybe a bad analogy, but does anyone else have a comment on this?
I think Ronnie does.
Yeah.
Mr. Kopp or Mr. Bell?
I'm going to move forward with this, Shirley, and I know that there's heartburn on a lot of people's feelings for this. We've said a letter from Mike Buffetti, and he talks about his daughter being able to afford a place to come if she was to be a teacher in this community. And if we don't provide opportunities for our children, I think we're remiss. And you know, it's very, very important that these issues be brought to the fore. And we're not looking at spending any money. This is an RFP, a request for proposals, that we will get some response from, and then we can sit down and we can examine it. And you know, is it an assisted living facility? Is it a nursing care, or is it end-of-life care? It's not. So we haven't completed our task. There's more to be done. This is just part of what I see as a long march to provide services for our citizens. The idea that this is that we're racing out the gate, I just don't see that. I think that we've been at this a long time. This is the next step, and I'm ready to take that next step and see where it takes us. And then I think when we have a concrete proposal before us, we can make a concrete assessment of the costs, the tax implications, any other things that might be surrounded by it. But, you know, do I think it ought to be a 10-story building? Absolutely not. Do I think it ought to be 150 units? Absolutely not. I've got a number in my own head of what I'd like to see it. Do I see what the affordability is? Yes, I have a number in my head too that I think that is well worth us discussing when the occasion arises. But the fact is that there are not a opportunity for people to come into this community. You say there's no demand because everybody living in this town has a roof over their head, presumably. So there's
I
no.
didn't say there was no demand.
Well, I think some of the report here.
I quoted the report as saying there are not enough households in Cumberland to fill the affordable units or the family units.
Well, just to clarify, it said there are not enough households to fill a family-only unit out of Cumberland. And there is also not enough seniors to fill a senior-only unit out of Cumberland. That's why they recommend a mix.
Right. All right. All right, I've said enough.
Please, Ms. Filson.
I think that, one, I just want to thank everyone who's come out tonight. This is emotional for everybody, and I just appreciate all of the time. And I think also talking about some of these issues is incredibly tricky. So my family and I moved here in 2016, and in 2020, I was 9 months pregnant and scheduled for a C-section at Maine Med with my second child, and my husband got laid off. I had a week, and we had a week. My salary would not have allowed us to pay for our mortgage, $3,000 a month in childcare expenses. I don't know about families who are struggling. I can speak to my other counselor down there who has three under three. I think that, you know, it's incredibly difficult. And then I'll tell you, and he was lucky, he got another job. And then the same thing happened to us again this June. And I was not 9 months pregnant at the time, but one of the things that kind of, you know, saved us, and I know that we're kind of focused on housing, but I think the affordability part is key here. You know, one of the reasons that we didn't kind of get forced out of our home back in 2020 is because my husband was working in Massachusetts, and they have incredibly progressive laws around healthcare. So we were able to maintain our current coverage and kind of take that time to breathe. But had we been, you know, responsible for that mortgage, the $3,000 a month in daycare. Oh, and did I mention this happened 2 weeks before lockdown? So I think that all of us feel it. There are many people, you know, in our community who are struggling. You know, I keep going back to that 120, or we have 539 renters in the community. 124 of them are rent burdened. 108 are severely rent burdened. And having options so that they don't get forced out of the community, because we know that the housing stock isn't just a Cumberland issue. It's something that's going on throughout the state of Maine. I feel like it's incumbent on us to look for those solutions. I do pride myself on being a really great listener. And for me, the RFP is the next step in this information gathering process, which we want everyone to be a part of. We are in discovery mode, and the developers, and of course we will take everything that they bring or give to us with a grain of salt. but that's the next step to understand what's possible and what we can do. I'd also just like to note, like, I often go back to the community survey that we did. 63% of Cumberland residents either strongly support or support housing for young families. And 76% of families in Cumberland either strongly support or support housing for elderly household, or housing for the 55 plus. And so I think that none of us are speaking just for ourselves. The community has expressed a desire to at least look into this. I think we are doing that. Should we be, Mike, Shirley, absolutely. If we didn't drill in more, I apologize for that. I apologize if you feel as though I did not reach out to you proactively enough. I would hope at this point that you know me enough to know that I do take that really seriously.
Oh, yeah.
For me tonight, I think I am in favor, obviously, of moving forward with the RFP, because to me, it is the next step in a process that is going to give us the time and space as a council, as well as a community through these neighborhood meetings, to sit down and understand whether or not it's viable, if it makes sense, and if the benefits outweigh. There are going to be 3 neighborhood meetings. If you take a peek over at that process map that Mark put together, there are going to be 3 neighborhood meetings.
Numbers were laid out for us. What would you say is severely tax burdened?
Great question. I think I'd have to.
It's probably different for every person.
What's that?
I'd say it's probably different for every person.
I'm talking like community-wise. I mean, we have numbers for severely rent burdened, but we also have a number of households that I would counter, but we don't have the numbers other than the ones I calculated.
I think when I retire, I'm going to be severely tax burdened.
Severely tax burdened. And when you're talking 8, 9, 10% of household income for property taxes, that feels severe to me.
Yeah, I would agree. And I also would have to say that when we know what the project looks like, that will give us a better answer as to what any tax implications will be. We just don't know that yet.
One thing
You have something,
I just wanted to say, you know, as Tig was kind of talking through her kind of background there, I think it's a reminder to everyone that we are people too. Like, I took this opportunity to run for town council because I cared about our community. I wanted to understand what was happening better and where I'm sitting from. I share the same concerns that a lot of you do, you know, as it pertains to our tax base. It's scary. I'm scared all the time. I have 3 kids in daycare. I'm the primary breadwinner. It's a scary world, and we're all sharing the same concerns, and I myself will not make a decision that is not fiscally responsible, and I feel like we all feel that same way. I think that is where we can all find common ground, and I think from my perspective, moving this forward is just taking a step in that direction to better understand, like Tig said, data collection, understanding what's out there, what are the things, asking the questions. This is my first RFP on the council, and it's, you know, been very eye-opening to hear so many different perspectives, but understand that we too share those same perspectives. And I think, you know, being respectful of when people are sharing stories or sharing their perspective, I think just remember we're all people here too. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kopp, did you have anything?
I'm proud to live in this community. I run a business in this community. I live in this community. I'm 5th generation in this community. My son lives beside me. He's 6th generation. My grandkids live with my son, and they will be the 7th generation. I will not sell my home. I will leave my home to my grandchildren. And hopefully I will leave my legacy to my grandchildren in this town. And hopefully Kopp Motors will be there when I'm in the marble orchard.
Everybody laughs, but I'm proud to be from this community. I don't sit up here for the money. I'm here because I have a genuine interest in what happens in this community. Not everybody has the opportunity that I have had. My family left me enough land so that I could build a house. I live in an affordable house. If I sold my house, it would not be categorized as an affordable house. My son lives in an affordable house. My parents live in an affordable house. There's people that are not as fortunate as me that would love to live in this community. This has been a hot topic for going on 2+ years. Mark, I condone you for bringing this forward. This has not been easy, and I've given this more thought. I am not on board with David Chase's condominiums down on Blackstrap, but I am in forward of putting out a request for a proposal. And that's all we're doing, is putting out a request for a proposal. There's nothing more gratifying than when I come home at night and I drive up my driveway and my 4 grandchildren are standing out there waving to me because they live beside me. That is worth a lot of money. And there's people in this room that's grandchildren don't live in this community, that probably don't even live in this state. And they should be jealous of me because I have a benefit. And that's worth a lot. If we don't allow, or if we don't listen to a proposal for somebody to come up and tell us what they might be able to do on a piece of land, this is wrong. We need to listen to the experts. I am going to vote for this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kopp.
Just-
Any other comments, please?
Just real quick. Tig, you listen better than anybody that's been on this council, so don't let anybody tell you not. My whole thing was, I just wish we had gotten together as a group and discussed the RFP. That's it. And Ronnie, I could have very easily be with you tonight on this thing, except we were not given an opportunity as a group to say, we want to send out 5 different ideas, we want to send out one, or let them tell us. We weren't given that opportunity, and that's where I think we as a council dropped the ball, and that's why I can't support it. But I get where you're coming from.
And I agree with you, Mike, but I think the problem is we don't know what we don't know. I mean, I think the experts will lay it out, and I'm hoping that we'll have some great idea that none of us even thought of. You know, I'm hoping that somebody comes forward with an idea that just blows us out of the water. But until we do this, we won't know.
I would accept a motion if we're done with discussion here. Councilor Bill.
I would move to authorize the town manager to prepare a request for proposal for an affordable housing project to be constructed on the town-owned property on Drown Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion on the topic? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed? Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. Appreciate comments both for and against. I know it's not always easy to do that. Thank you. We may take a 10-minute recess just to
Thank
let
you.
folks gather themselves a little bit before we move on. Thank you.
We may take 15, let everybody go, because I gotta hit it.
Nice job, ladies.
It is, it's all.
Oh, I needed it too.
Thank God the youngest person.
Sean and them.
Something.
Hang tough, kid, hang tough.
Ladder
I
the
think
size
we're back on here after a short little recess.
Whoa, baby.
Okay. Everyone, we are back up and running again after a short little recess that was much needed. Thank you again to everyone who came tonight to talk about that first agenda item. We will be moving to the next item on the agenda, which is 23-092, to hold a public hearing and act on the recommendation of a Goral Palmer Engineers to make the intersection of Tuttle and Middle Road a four-way stop. I will note right from the outset that this has been tabled to September 26th.
I move to table to September 26th.
We have a motion and a second. I think that's probably the more appropriate way to do it. Thank you, Shirley. We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion on tabling this? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, unanimous, thank you. That has been tabled. The next agenda item is 23-093 to set a public hearing date of September 26th, also to consider and act on the recommendation of Goral Palmer Engineers to make the intersection of Route 100 and Range Road at J Brothers a four-way stop. I understand there was a meeting this last week. I was unfortunately out of town, but would you maybe give an update on kind of that meeting? And Mr. Kopp, you can jump in as well if you have comments.
Yeah, I would love to. It was a banger of a neighborhood meeting. We were at Valhalla, kind of discussing the proposed always stop at the intersection of Route 100, Range Road, and J Brothers. And following a great presentation from Randy Dunton over at Goral Palmer, which really kind of tapped into a lot of the accidents at that intersection or when you're making a left into J Brothers. And so we had a lot of really kind of great community dialogue around, you know, what it would look like to put in that all-way stop, and in the process, there was some really great ideating that happened because, as someone said earlier, there are a lot of really smart people that live in Cumberland. So basically, one of kind of the larger issues is sight distance. And Ronnie and Mr. Shane, please feel free to jump in. But my understanding is that we need 500 feet or more, and we currently have around 300 to 350. And so one of the options that we could have is to kind of shave the hill down maybe 2 to 3 feet. And that could be done when we do the water line, taking the water line over, which is already a planned project. And we would also be looking at doing maybe a 50% cost share with DOT. And possibly, you know, having that other part, because it's tied to the water, be coming out of a TIF zone. I know Ron has a little bit more tactical experience because he drives a wrecker that makes him a little bit taller in certain vehicles. So Ron, I don't know if you want to jump in and add some additional context.
Hey, Tig, was it well attended, the meeting?
Yeah, it was there were, I don't know, 50 people at least?
Yeah.
Close.
Yeah,
Over
it was
40.
great.
Good.
Valhalla, we had it was awesome.
Mr. Chair, the night of the meeting, I took special notice that day driving north on Route 100. If I'm driving one of my heavier wreckers, I sit probably 2 to 3 feet higher in the cab of that than I do in my regular car carrier. If I'm coming north and approaching J Brothers, I can actually see the guardrails at the bottom of the knoll in my higher wrecker. We have a water line that is somewhat completed, and it needs to be finished. It needs to be hooked to the bridge down at the bottom. So when they do decide to blow up the road and hook that water line up would be the time that we decided to take 2 feet out of the crown of that road, and it would create the sight distance. And there was nobody there that supported a four-way stop. None of the citizens wanted a four-way stop. The town manager suggested that when we do the water line, that maybe we do a 50-50 partnership with the DOT to take some of the grade off the road would completely solve the problem. You'll still probably have an accident every now and then from people being careless, but it would triple the sightline distance just by taking 2 feet out of the crown of the road.
Do we know when that water line work is scheduled to happen?
It has been in your CIP for a while. There's no reason that we can't talk about it during the next budget process to look at maybe pushing that forward, trying to get a municipal partnership agreement with the DOT so they would pay for half of the road repair, which to me, we did the same thing on Route 9 up by Crossroad, where we shaved that hill down before we put that barrier in for the railroad track. That was a partnership agreement with DOT. This would be almost identical to what we did over there. You will have estimates at your meeting, how much we'd actually have to shave off, and they're gonna come with a cost estimate for what that would approximately cost for that work. So we'll have a lot more information on the 26th. That's why I think, having both those items the same night would be very advantageous. And I agree with Tig. It was a great lot of feedback from the community there. A lot of people had some great ideas, and I think everybody left there feeling that went pretty well, and at least we were listening to ideas. And personally, I think the next round of the budget, we should really look at that in the CIP process, because again, we have thousands of TIF projects. That was identified as a potential TIF project as well.
Please, Counselor.
Bill, how does it work with the state on a municipality going out and doing construction work on a state road?
Same thing on Route 9. We did the same thing we're doing on Main Street right now. We basically work with an agreement with the state. The state is funding about $300,000 of the Main Street project we're doing right now. They funded almost $150,000 on the Route 9 project when we lowered the hill by Crossroad by the railroad tracks there. So we just basically apply for a municipal partnership initiative, and that's been fairly new and been aggressively enforced since Commissioner Van Note's been the commissioner at DOT. He really has taken that and saw the advantage of working with towns through that process. If not, Mike, we would just have to wait in line forever for that to happen. It would never rise to the top. So when we bring something to the table that improves the road, they are definitely listening, and they're really trying to fund those.
Great, thank you.
So the activity tonight and the motion tonight is to set a public hearing date for the 26th to discuss this item and act on it further. Is there a public comment opportunity? Please, members of the public.
Maybe somebody said it, but what was the engineer's recommendation?
It was to put in the always stop.
Oh, okay, so,
Four-way stop.
yeah. They did recommend the four-way stop.
They sure did.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay, yep.
Like I mentioned at the meeting the other night, why don't they just lower the speed limit to 35 from the Falmouth town line to at least beyond Cop Motors, beyond the top of the hill? Or why not from town line to town line, 35 mile an hour? That takes care of the sight distance, and you're saving bucks. It costs you a couple of $100 to replace the sign. Plus, Ron brought up at that meeting about the different speed limits through town, and you can, so that's my point. And nobody seems to want to listen to that.
That was brought up at the meeting too, Bob. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah.
There's 3 different speed limit signs within 300 yards down there. I do think that will be addressed as much as the sight line will be too. But I do think that even at 35, I think the sight line needs to be addressed. But I do think that the 35 miles an hour from the gray line to probably the Falmouth line would be a good idea. And I think they will address that when they do it, so, yep.
Thank you. Mr. Manager.
Councilor Filson and I were talking about that same thing at the meeting, to put that item on that meeting the same night that the stop sign and lowering of the hill and all the capital improvement work was going to be done. There would be a separate item for a request by the town council for the DOT to consider lowering the speed limit on Route 100. So that is all going to kind of happen the same night while we have the same crowd in the audience. So it just seemed like it was a simple thing to do.
What is it by J Brothers now?
Ooh, 50.
50 at J Brothers, 40 just past J Brothers, and when you get to the crown of Lower Methodist Road, it's 35.
Yeah. And
It's all
then
within
at the
300
top of
yards.
the hill, it goes back to 40, and then it goes to 50 again.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's
it
nuts.
really is insane. And to Bob's point, when you pull out of Lower Methodist Road, the sight line is not a great deal better there than it is down at J Brothers, so.
Yes,
Get
please.
that? Yeah, you come out of, what I've learned, you come out of Lower Methodist Road. You look to right, you don't see anything. You look to the left, you don't see anything. You look to the right again, there's a car coming over the hill. Car's hidden here. You look to the left, there's another car coming over here. So you can't look both ways and pull out, because those hills hide vehicles, and it's quite dangerous there.
Thank you. Mr. Kopp, any other comments on that?
Nope. I'll give you a motion if you want.
Please.
Mr. Chairman, I move to set a public hearing date of September 26th to consider and act on a recommendation of Goral Palmer Engineers to make the intersection of Route 100 and Range Road and J Brothers a four-way stop sign.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any more discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, moving now to the next agenda item, which is 23-094, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a medical marijuana registered caregiver license renewal for SSJA LLC owner Jacob Atchison, located at 217 Gray Road.
Mr. Chairman, I move to remove this from the table.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. Do we have any discussion as to why it's being removed from the table?
It wasn't complete at the last meeting. It was brought to our attention by Ms. Story King that it wasn't a complete application, and I believe it has been completed. Shirley, you may have more comment, but.
I guess I'm currently unclear as to.
Yeah, the application was incomplete the last time it was.
I understand the
yeah.
facts there, but
Do
I
I
guess
have to
I was
remove it
I was
from the table?
confused by the motion to remove it from the table.
It
with
was
that.
tabled. and
Oh,
we didn't-
gotcha.
We
I'm with you.
we didn't have a specific date to come
Gotcha,
back.
okay.
Does Shirley have to remove it where she made the motion?
No.
Okay, all right.
Do I need to remove it from?
No, he said you don't.
Okay.
I made the motion to remove it from the table. Bob seconded it, so.
Okay, so we have a motion to remove it from its previous status as tabled, now to untabled, and i.e.
Well, I
it can be
was-
removed further,
I'm
right?
sorry I wasn't paying complete attention because I was looking at it to see
Yeah.
what was still missing.
Oh, I'm just removing it from the table so
And
that
one
we
of the
can.
things that's missing, I mean, this is,
Can we get it off the table
Yes,
first
let's,
before we
let's,
discuss?
so we
can
have a
discuss.
motion, we have a second to untable it effectively.
untable it.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Now that that item has been put back on the table, let's maybe open up some additional discussion on the topic.
Is it
Please.
too late for everyone, or?
Well, one of the things I was looking at the very end of the item is, you know, the signatures by all our staff that, you know, it's been passed. And I guess, you know, it's conditional upon final approval by the code enforcement officer. I asked Bill, sorry to bother him on a weekend, like, but I did, like, why is this so complicated compared to the other three we've passed? Why can't these people get it right?
It's a very fair question. One of the things I learned is that in the beginning, it did not meet the design requirements for Route 100. So Carla had them basically install fake windows on the front. It looked like just a big blank front of a store frontage. So she made them to come in more into conformance with the Route 100 standards. So that took a long time. And then their licensure, they were one of the initial people that applied when this first came out, and that was the third one that we allowed to stop at that point on Route 100 for these type of medical marijuana facilities. But it hasn't truly been a priority by the owner to kind of get up to speed with a lot of the other issues. And now, a year later, he feels like he's ready. He's not ready to open yet because he still has some internal designs that have to be finished. He's received an occupancy permit from the code officer So he meets code, but he's still not ready to open for the medical marijuana dispensary piece. And that has to be signed off by the code officer, the fire chief, and the police chief. So that still is in progress. It could be weeks away from being ready, but he can't do anything until that final sign-off is ready
Which
to go.
application fee did he have to pay? The renewal or the
No, the
initial?
full
Okay.
initial fee.
That was another question
Yep.
I had, because, but then we look at, what we got, and we have no office use, only signatures from the code enforcement officer, the police department, the fire department, and other staff.
He hasn't had the final inspection yet, and
Okay.
that is pending. And that's why in front of you tonight is the conditional approval upon code officer final inspection, and that comes
The
with the
chiefs
police
have
chief.
to write off before the code enforcement officer
They go
signs
together.
off.
They go together. They all three go,
chiefs?
both chiefs and the code officer go on the final inspection.
Any comments? Do you feel like your concerns have been addressed?
Yes, do I like it? No.
This is also a public discussion, public
Heartburn.
comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address this matter? Okay, seeing none, I would happily accept a motion.
I'll give you a motion. I move to approve the medical marijuana registered caregiver license renewal for SSJ, parentheses LLC, owner Jacob Akerson, located at 217 Gray Road, conditional upon final approval by the code enforcement officer.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any other discussion on this? Seeing none, all those in favor? All those opposed?
I like my Ts crossed.
6-1 on that, thank you. Okay, next agenda item, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on setting sewer user fees for fiscal year 2024. This was one that, Mr. Manager, I think came out to everybody as a little bit of a surprise, just given the fact that sewer fees have been effectively static for the last 3 years. It looks like there's a pretty large capital improvement going on in Falmouth, and because we are a 1/3 owner in that facility, any major capital improvements would be attributable to us by that 1/3 percentage. It seems like there's been, is this correct, about a $1.1 million improvement in the water district there?
Over the next 5 years, there'll be about $400,000 of improvements at the treatment plant proposed by the town of Falmouth, as well as almost $400,000 in capital improvements to pump stations and force mains in Cumberland by the Portland Water District. That on top of about $100,000 in just annual increases over the next 5 years is about an $880,000 increase. So it is a significant increase. I basically told the Portland Water District we won't be ready probably until October to implement that. So whereas most of the residents have not seen this yet, I didn't want you to table this before I had all that to say. So if you're comfortable tabling this to get more public input, that's fine. It would give us a chance to send out letters and hold another public hearing after this has been tabled, and that's up to you. We can do that. We can do that on the 26th or even later. I'll just let the Portland Water District know to delay the implementation. We have monies in our sewer fund, our reserve fund now, and at the Portland Water District. These impacts are also going to affect the town of Falmouth, as they own 70% of this, and a lot of those, the rest of that cost is on the town of Falmouth. So they're going to struggle hard with those increases too, but this was kind of a shock. We knew it was coming, but I didn't think it was a 65% increase. So, and that's over the next 3 to 5 years.
Please,
Could
Councilor.
we have historical data going back more than 3 years? Because I think if you look back over the last 10 years, the increases have been very small.
6 years, we haven't had an increase.
Yeah. The other thing I wondering too, are the sewers and enterprise fund, correct?
That is correct. It's,
So the reason we have money in that account is because we have some people paying a ready-to-serve fee who aren't using it?
that is correct. But that's not that's not a lot of money.
Does that make sense
It's
to
a lot of money.
everybody?
Yeah, I would probably want to table this. I think that a 15% increase, you know,
Alone is big.
yeah, that's a big increase for a lot of people, and I feel like there just needs to be more conversation surrounding it and just some awareness, and I don't feel comfortable approving that, so I would move to table this.
I concur.
We have a motion, and I believe Counselor Vale has provided a second. Any other discussion on this to move to table it?
To table?
I think the motion is to table, correct?
Yes.
We have a motion,
If I
please,
can
of
barely,
course.
and I'm not against that, just, can you explain to you, what are you hoping to look?
I just want to understand a little bit more how we're getting to that number. Is there a way we can do a slower increase over the years? Is there some funds that we can use to make this less? I mean, just seeing the numbers, I think even if you look back, like, people don't care about the historical data, they care about what's happening right now, right? Like, as much as you can feed them that and say, oh, we haven't had an increase in 10 years, as a consumer, I look at that and I go, 15%? Like, that's a big deal. Heating costs, food costs, all those things. I just think we need to at least let the community know a little bit more before, and have a conversation, hear feedback, see if there's any ideas that come from that, and then go from there.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would tend to agree. I think this is a big enough issue that we might need more information and more time to digest it and talk about it. So we have a motion to table. We have a second to table.
Is there a date you'd like to wait till? Give us a month to get more data for you, so we'll push it to the 26th?
I
Would
think that
be
makes
all right?
sense.
Yeah.
That's okay with everyone? Okay, I think the 26th, yeah. Okay, we have a motion to table. We have a second. Any other comments on this? Seeing none. All those in favor to table? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Can I have a question of process or whatever it is? Once an item is tabled and or the motion is made to table and seconded, isn't discussion supposed to stop?
That is correct. Robert's Rules of Order.
Just-
Yes,
just-
correct.
Good point. And also the untabling
future.
was a nice thing to learn.
Order of operations, basic math skills,
Thank you for that.
applying it to,
This, folks, is
Town
why
government.
institutional knowledge is very important
It
on
is.
any council or any board.
We obey those laws very strictly here.
I appreciate that. I
Logins
like
will be
it.
issued later.
Is that a point of order? Is that what it's called?
I think it's a point of order.
Okay.
And duly noted. Okay, so the next item on the agenda is 23-096, to consider and act on setting the following household waste disposal events. Confidential shredding on Saturday, October 7th from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., and bulky item pickup week, one of my favorite weeks of the year, from October 9th through the 13th.
Been to my house.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I have a question. How many people participate in confidential shredding?
It's a big line right till 1 o'clock, so.
It is?
Quite
Oh,
a few.
okay.
Yep.
I thought most people burned their stuff. Paper burner.
Only people with fire permits.
Oh, yep, you're right.
Point of
Anyway,
order.
sorry, go ahead.
Bailey, that's a fair question, but
It is.
one of the first things no, who needs that? And the truck was full.
I remember
last
that
time I
last
went.
year.
All right.
Okay, so we do have a motion. I do not believe we have a
Second.
second. Okay.
Give it to
Counselor
Roddy.
Okay, well, we'll give that second to Mr. Kopp. Any other discussion on that motion of setting those dates for confidential shredding and bulky item pickup week? Seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is 23-097, to hold a public hearing to consider and act on an amendment to the official Town of Cumberland overlay zoning map to remove the manufactured housing MH overlay zone, as it is now obsolete, as recommended by the planning board. Mrs. Story King, do you have any
I
comments
have
on
no
that?
information on this because it didn't come to ordinance.
Yeah, it came right from the planning board as a correction to the map, since it is no
Is it
longer.
obsolete because of a definition?
Yeah, because manufactured housing now is allowed in every zone, so, it's.
Does that
it's,
include mobile homes or
If they're on a foundation. If they're on a foundation, yes.
if they're on a foundation, they are not manufactured housing?
I believe that's why the definition became obsolete.
Okay.
So we at one point had several, I think 2 zones in town that had, was a manufactured housing overlay, and then that was found, I think, was struck down by the state legislature, but we've never taken it off our maps. So more of a housekeeping issue than anything of consequence to us, so.
Well, I was asking because, you know, my brother, your favorite person, Mr. Vale, was suggesting he had some ways to create affordable housing and by putting in a mobile home park down on his property. He said, how would the people of Cumberland feel about that? It's just a kind of a thought.
Any comments from the public, or from the public as well as from the council on this topic? Okay, the planning board again has given us its advice to remove this because it is now an obsolete definition and is permitted in every zone. So I would welcome a motion to move in accordance with what the planning board recommended.
Mr. Chair, I'll give you a motion. I move to amend the official Town of Cumberland overlay zoning map to remove manufactured housing, MH overlay zone, as it now obsolete, as recommended by the planning board.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any other discussion, any public discussion on this topic? Seeing none. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, and the final item on the agenda this evening is 23-098 to move the September 25th Town Council meeting to Tuesday, September 26th, and the October 9th Town Council meeting to Tuesday, October 10th, in observance of Yom Kippur and Indigenous Peoples' Day.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Any discussion from the council? Any discussion on moving those dates from the public? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. That is the end of legislation and policy. We now move to new business, and I will go ahead and start on my left with.
Manager's report?
Oh, excuse me. Thank you very much. Manager's report was moved to the end of the agenda here.
I honestly will pass unless you have questions about anything related about what's going on around town. I'd be happy to answer that, but in light of the hour, there's nothing that can't wait 2 more weeks.
I think that's fair. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, new business. Councilor Kopp.
I'd like to donate my $20 to the 4-H food pantry auction, which is approximately 3 to 4 weeks away now. Mr. Manager will go and spend our money wisely on some 4-H animals for the food pantry. And the Lions Club is in the process of building a new booth. Jokingly, I asked Councilor Vale how much cash he had on him tonight. I'm going to donate another $50 towards, and I'm just doing this for Bob's benefit. And it goes to a very worthy cause. The Lions Club does great things in this community. So here's $50, Bob, you make sure they get it.
You're killing me.
And I
Ron-
appreciate all that you do, so thank you.
Ron, the booth looks amazing. I saw it the other day.
It does. They've
Looks
done
very
a phenomenal
nice.
job.
Yeah.
And Bob can comment, they have had a tremendous amount of donations.
Oh,
They
good.
really have.
That's great.
It's really, really coming
That's all
together
I have,
well.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Vale.
Hancock Lumber has just showered us with gifts to build that facility. People, I wish I could remember the name because they deserve a shout out to donated quartz countertops for the whole thing.
What?
And installed them. Somebody else donated a stainless steel hood over the cooking area. They welded it in place, put a duct up through the roof. Guggens, Rusty Guggens and Company have donated electrical services
Wow.
and wire. It's can be a great asset for the community. That's all I got.
Thank you. Councilor Filson.
I just want to say thank you to all the people that showed up tonight, the 4 people that are still here. You guys are awesome. And also the folks that have been coming to just the different neighborhood meetings. I continue to be just bamboozled by the talent and the dedication in our community. And, you know, that's what makes some of these evenings that are a little trickier for all of us to process emotionally. Just the turnout is really heartening. So thank you guys. That's it for me.
Thanks,
Councilor
Tate.
Douglas.
Yeah, just a reminder, Rise Pizza is now open. Wander at Longwoods is as well. Check it out if you haven't.
Have you been?
No, I'm dying to go. I got 3 kids though. Who's watching them?
Mike is.
And run around Wander.
Yeah.
I say I'll buy you a pizza and a beer, but you
Yeah.
gotta find somebody.
Drop the kids off at my house.
All right, yeah. Mm.
Careful what you wish
Yeah.
for. Bob.
Yeah.
Free labor for you. That's
Yeah.
just what you're looking for. They'll all have hammers by the
Counselor
time you
Eads.
pick 'em up.
Real quickly, and I know Ron and I have talked about this, and surprisingly barely actually mentioned it the last time. Hunting season's coming. I would encourage the hunters in Cumberland. The way the process now is you can take an extra deer or two. And if you harvest one, please consider donating it to the food pantry. Tom Gruber told me years ago that I think I donated the first half of a moose. And he goes, Mike, I'm not a hunter, but the first thing they want is game meat with the people that show up. So, look, it's good for the community. It keeps the deer population in check. It's good for our people at the food pantry, the people who are serving, and it's just good all around. So I would encourage, and I'm going to do it. I got a moose permit. I won't be here on the meeting on the 26th. I'll be on the hunt, but I've already committed to donating half of it to the food pantry, and I would encourage others to do the same. That's all I have.
Counselor Story King.
So I want to thank whoever gave us the passes for the Cumberland Fair. I guess I'm going to have to use it to go visit the Lions Club booth. I've always had a little PTSD about the fair. When I was in 3rd grade, one of my classmates disappeared during Fair Week. You guys would remember. Had nothing to do with the fair, but there was always speculation that it was. So I guess I'll go this year. I like the agricultural part anyway. My next item before I start, I just want to say that my item is not personal, and I have no issues with North Yarmouth. I have no issues with the SAD Board of Directors. I'll give you a little context. On June 1st, we had a gathering for my dad in his memory, and someone there asked me, if we're going to build a $100,000 school and Cumberland's responsible for 70 million of it, 70% of it, what would it cost to dissolve the district? Not a personal question, just a fiduciary question, okay, folks? Before everyone out there listening goes and says, I'm advocating for dissolving the district. I am not. I just wanted some numbers. So I asked Scott Poulin, and he spent about 4 weeks trying to figure it out and came back with nothing. He thinks it would be more expensive to dissolve it than pay our share of a new school. He also said that he thought the new school will probably be closer to 75 million than 100 million. But we were chatting because anything you write down is subject to FOIA or anything else. And, but in the interest of full transparency, he shared with me that in our 55 years in the district, we have never negotiated our cost-sharing method. It has always been based on valuation. And Cumberland will be paying 72% of the share for upcoming school, and we have 68% of the population in the schools. So I'm not sure if my numbers are correct. I went online, I went to the Department of Ed website. There are lots of other options for cost sharing. Some school boards have a board review of their cost sharing every 5 years. It's written into their structure. Some weight their board votes according to population and assets. Several York County districts base it 50% on valuation, 50% on student enrollment. Some base it 70% on valuation, 30% on student enrollment. Those tend to be more up in the mid-coast area. RSU 5, which is Freeport, asks that these things be considered. They have fairness, they've identified fairness factors, and their fairness factors include state valuation, relative state valuations, relative populations, and student headcounts. So I was looking, and I might just be naive because I'm not a finance person, but I'm looking at a $75 million school. And if we're paying, Cumberland is expected to pay 72% of that, that's $54 million. If we did student enrollment at 68%, that's $51 million, a difference of $3 million. And I think as a town council, or as a town councilor, that's not nickels and dimes, that's $3 million. Some, like if we went like the York County schools do, that do 50-50, you'd split that difference. But it would still be $1.5 million of Cumberland taxpayer money. So I have that information. I wanted to share it with you. I'm not sure we'll do anything with it. I would like it to be part of the conversation with the district moving forward. I would like full transparency around this item going forward. So,
Do you have any feeling
and
for
if
the,
any school board members or Scott or anybody out there have figured my math to be incorrect, please let me know. Because I'm looking at the local only dollars, not what the state requires us. And the school where the board is proposing to build is a local only school.
do you have any sense of what it was last year, or a 5-year rate, or a 10-year rate, where that fluctuation is?
No, that's another good question
And
to
when it
ask.
might be next year, and whether it
Yeah.
might turn against us?
Well, this year's is based on last year, right? 72% is based on last year's valuation of Cumberland.
It's a 3-year rolling average.
3-year average?
3-year average.
3-year average.
Please.
I just want to throw that, Shirley, that's great,
Would-
but that doesn't count financing.
Can you step, I can't hear you. I can't hear Ron at the other end of the dais, so.
Bill Young, Hedgerow. That doesn't that doesn't include the financing. The financing on this would go over $100 million over the 22 years, so your figures would go up. It'd be more 5 to 7 million in there. That would be the difference, because that's the cost of the school, but the financing, that's what I've been beating on, is this,
Okay.
is the financing of is what you gotta figure, once you get it done. So,
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, here's the rule
Yeah.
with some notes I made in the margin, if you want to take a look at it.
That's great. I appreciate you sharing that. I appreciate you taking the time to look into that. I think anything should be open for discussion, but trying to figure out who leads that and when it happens is another topic. But I think, is that, did you have anything else, Shirley?
No, that's
Okay.
it. Oh, no,
That means yes.
high school sports started last Monday, and I would like to wish them all good luck, especially Greeley football. Coach King is in the background over here. You know, they have their first opening game at Lake Region at 7 o'clock on Friday. And not to jinx them, but they're fun to watch so far.
That's really great. I saw that article in the newspaper. Congratulations. That's awesome. Best of luck. Okay, so I think for me, I don't really have any other new business apart from just really thanking everybody who came tonight. We had 21 really brave souls who got up and spoke in front of a microphone, which is not always easy to do. For some people, it's very easy. For some, it is terrifying. So I just want to thank everybody for coming up and expressing their concerns. Also, folks in support, and also the emails that came in throughout the day on this topic. There's only 7 of us up here, but triple the amount got up and spoke at the microphone today. With that, I would happily take a motion to adjourn, given the late hour.
So moved. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, everyone.
What do you have for dinner waiting?
Oh, I ate a peanut butter and jelly on my way home, or on my way home.
You know, I